Mary, a tall, beautiful black girl, Mary is just 18 years old when she started working in Chief John's house as a housemaid. She is a quiet girl, always looking innocent and hardworking. Chief John was a wealthy man, respected by many, but his household was far from peaceful. He had a wife, Rose, and 2 children, Joel and Jennifer. Rose was different from other mothers. She never cooked, never cleaned, and never washed her husband's clothes. Instead, she spent her days eating snacks, scrolling through her phone, and ordering the latest fashion trends online. She believed that as long as she had money, she didn't need to lift a finger. Mary was the one who did everything in the house. She woke up early to prepare breakfast for the family, cleaned every corner of the mansion, and took care of the children. Joel and Jennifer, though young, had sharp eyes. They noticed that their mother never spent time with them. Instead, Mary was the one who helped them with homework, dressed them for school, and even comforted them when they were sad. To them, Mary felt more like a mother than Rose. Chief John, on the other hand, was a man of discipline. He hated eating outside, so Mary had to cook all his meals. He liked his clothes neat and fresh, and again, it was Mary who washed and ironed them. John often complained to Rose about her laziness, but Rose always rolled her eyes and said, "Why should I stress myself when we have Mary? She is paid to do all this." This often led to heated arguments between them, but Rose never changed. One evening, after a long and tiring day, Mary sat on the kitchen floor, exhausted. She had washed clothes, cleaned the entire house, cooked, and still had to make dinner. Tears welled up in her eyes. She felt trapped. She had no time for herself. She was tired, but no one seemed to care. She looked at her hands, they were rough from too much scrubbing. Her back ached from bending all day. Meanwhile, Joel and Jennifer sat in the living room, watching their mother as she scrolled through her phone, laughing at some funny videos. Jennifer, only 10 years old, turned to her brother and whispered, "Why doesn't Mommy cook for us? Why does she always tell Mary to do everything?" Joel, who was just 12, frowned. "I don't know. I think Mommy doesn't like working." Jennifer thought for a moment. "But isn't she supposed to take care of us? Why does Mary do everything? Even at school, my friends say their moms cook for them. Why is ours different?" Joel had no answer. Instead, he turned to his mother and asked, "Mom, why don't you ever cook for us?" Rose was surprised by the question. She laughed and said, "Because Mary is here to do that. Why should I stress myself?" "But you are our mother," Jennifer said. "Don't you love us?" Rose felt a slight sting in her heart. She had never thought about it that way. To her, she was just enjoying life, but to her children, she was not present. That night, as Mary lay in her small room, she made a decision. She couldn't continue like this. She needed to do something. But what could she do? She had no family to run to, no place to go. Yet, deep inside, she knew she couldn't stay in Chief John's house forever. The next morning, Mary woke up with a heavy heart. She went about her chores, but her usual smile was missing. Joel and Jennifer noticed the change. Mary, who used to chat with them and tell them stories, was now quiet and distant. When they asked for help with their homework, she responded curtly, "Do it yourselves." The children felt confused and hurt. Chief John is a busy man. His business demanded most of his time, keeping him away from home. He believed that Rose was taking good care of their children in his absence. Little did he know that Rose was more interested in her online shopping and social gatherings than in her own kids. She left all the responsibilities to Mary, not realizing the burden she was placing on the young girl. One evening, Chief John returned home earlier than usual. He was surprised to find the house in disarray. The living room was cluttered, The kitchen sink was piled with dirty dishes, and the aroma of freshly cooked food was missing. He found Rose lounging on the couch, engrossed in her phone. "Rose, what's going on here?" he demanded. Rose barely looked up. "What do you mean?" "The house is a mess." "Where's Mary?" "Oh, I gave her the evening off." "She seemed tired," Rose replied nonchalantly. Chief John was taken aback. He had always assumed that Rose was the one managing the household and caring for the children when he was away. Now, seeing the reality, he felt a pang of guilt. He had been so consumed with his work that he failed to notice what was happening in his own home. Later that night, as he sat in his study, Chief John overheard a conversation between Joel and Jennifer. "I miss the old Mary," Jennifer said softly. "Me too," Joel agreed. "But I think we've been too dependent on her. Maybe we should try to do things on our own." Their words struck a chord with Chief John. He realized that not only had Rose neglected her duties as a mother, but he too had neglected his role as a father. Determined to make a change, he decided to confront Rose and have a serious discussion about their family's future. The next morning, Chief John woke up with a newfound determination. He had spent half the night reflecting on his children's words, the state of his home, and the role he had unknowingly played in Mary's silent suffering. He could no longer ignore the truth. His family was falling apart, and it was time to take action. At breakfast, he watched Rose sip her coffee leisurely while scrolling through her phone. Meanwhile, Mary moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing meals and packing school lunches. Her face was tired, her once bright eyes now dulled with exhaustion. The children ate their food in silence, sneaking glances at Mary, but she barely acknowledged them. Chief John cleared his throat. "Rose, we need to talk. Now." Rose barely looked up. "Can't it wait? I have an online sale starting in 10 minutes. "No, it can't wait," he said firmly. Sensing the seriousness in his voice, Rose sighed dramatically, set her phone aside, and crossed her arms. "Fine. What is it?" He took a deep breath. "This house is a mess, our children are distant, and Mary is exhausted. I thought you were managing things while I was away, but clearly, I was wrong." Rose coughed. "Oh, so now I'm the villain. I don't see the problem. Mary is just a maid. It's her job to do these things." Joel and Jennifer exchanged worried glances, while Mary stood frozen near the kitchen counter, her back turned to them. Chief John's voice hardened. "She is not just a maid, Rose. She's a child, barely older than Joel. And yet, she carries the weight of this entire household while you sit here scrolling through your phone." Rose rolled her eyes. "You're exaggerating." "No, it's not," Joel blurted out. Everyone turned to him in shock. He rarely spoke back to adults. "We've been treating Mary like she's our mother instead of our friend," he continued, his voice shaking with guilt. "She used to play with us, tell us stories, help us with schoolwork. But now, she's always tired and sad. It's because we depend on her too much. It's not fair." Jennifer nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "She doesn't even smile anymore, Daddy." A heavy silence filled the room. For the first time, Rose looked at Mary, really looked at her. She saw the slumped shoulders, the quiet resignation, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held a tray. Mary slowly turned around. "I don't mind helping," she said in a small voice, "but I'm just so tired." Something inside Chief John cracked. He had been blind for too long. He reached out and placed a gentle hand on Mary's shoulder. "You shouldn't have to do this alone," he said softly. Then he turned to his children. "From now on, we all share responsibilities. Joel, Jennifer, you're old enough to tidy up after yourselves and help out. And Rose, he fixed his wife with a firm gaze, we need to talk about how this family is run. Rose swallowed hard, her defenses crumbling. Deep down, she knew he was right. She had been so caught up in her own world that she had neglected not only her children but her responsibility as a wife and mother. Mary looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. At first, Rose pretended to take Chief John's words seriously. She made an effort, albeit a small one, to be present for the children. She cooked dinner once or twice, asked Jennifer about school, and even put her phone down during meals. But the change was short-lived. Within a few weeks, she fell back into her old habits. Shopping, gossiping, and scrolling through social media once again consumed her days. She barely acknowledged the household, leaving everything to Mary as usual. But something was different now. There was a restlessness in Rose, a dissatisfaction she couldn't quite explain. Then she met Anita. Anita was the wife of a wealthy businessman, a woman known for her extravagant lifestyle and love of the nightlife. She was bold, carefree, and had a way of making Rose feel like she was missing out on life. "Rose, you're wasting your best years cooped up at home," Anita said one afternoon as they lounged at an upscale cafe. "You need to enjoy yourself. There's more to life than running after kids and waiting for your husband to come home." Rose hesitated. But Chief John wouldn't like that. Anita waved her hand dismissively. "Men will always complain. But let me tell you something, if you don't put yourself first, no one else will." That night, Rose dressed in a sleek red dress, applied bold makeup, and slipped into high heels she hadn't worn in years. She told Chief John she was going for a ladies' night with Anita and would be back soon. She didn't return until 3 a.m. The pattern continued. At first, it was just weekends. Then, it became any night Rose felt bored. She would leave Mary and the children to fend for themselves, returning home reeking of alcohol and expensive perfume. Chief John was furious. "Rose, this is not the life of a mother and wife. You are abandoning your responsibilities." Rose laughed bitterly. "Oh, now you care about responsibilities. Where was all this concern when you left me alone for years while you worked late? When you hardly noticed me?" "That is not an excuse to neglect your family," he shot back. But Rose didn't care. She had a new life now, one that didn't involve stress, chores, or obligations. As weeks passed, things worsened. The house grew messier, the children more withdrawn. Mary, now completely overwhelmed, barely spoke anymore. Jennifer cried herself to sleep at night, and Joel had become angry and rebellious. One evening, Chief John received a call from one of his business associates. "John, I saw your wife at the club last night. She was not in a good state." Shame and frustration boiled inside him. This had to stop. That night, as Rose stumbled into the house, barely able to walk straight, Chief John was waiting. His face was unreadable, his eyes dark with disappointment. "We need to talk. Now." "Sorry, I'm tired and I need to sleep, don't disturb me," Rose said. Rose's behavior continued to spiral, but this time, she wasn't alone in her defiance. Anita and her new circle of friends fed her growing resentment toward Chief John. One afternoon, as they sat in an upscale restaurant sipping wine, Anita leaned in with a knowing smirk. "Rose, you're letting your husband control you," she said. "Why does he think he can tell you what to do while he goes about his business like a king? You deserve 50-50 respect." The other women at the table nodded in agreement. "If he can come and go as he pleases, so can you," another friend chimed in. "Why should you answer to him? Stand your ground. Talk back. Let him know you won't be pushed around." Rose, feeling emboldened, smirked. "You're absolutely right. John thinks he can lecture me like I'm one of his employees. He forgets I'm his wife, not his servant. That night, when Chief John returned home, exhausted from work, he found Rose lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone as usual. The house was a mess, dirty dishes piled in the sink, laundry scattered, and the children nowhere in sight. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Rose, we need to talk." Rose didn't look up. "About what?" "This can't go on," he said firmly. "The kids are suffering, the house is in shambles, and you're barely present. I need you to step up as their mother." Rose scoffed, setting her phone down. "Oh, so now you want to dictate how I live my life? What about you, John? You're always at work. Why don't you step up as their father?" Chief John's jaw tightened. "I work to provide for this family." "You?" "Exactly," she cut in. "You work, I live my life. If you expect me to take care of everything, then I expect 50-50 respect. I'm not your servant, and I won't be treated like one." Chief John stared at her, stunned. "This isn't about respect, Rose. It's about responsibility." Rose waved him off. "Responsibility? That's rich coming from you. If you want the house in order, hire more help. I'm done being a maid in my own home." Chief John clenched his fist. He had tried reasoning with her, but it was clear Rose had changed. She was no longer the woman he had married. As he walked away in frustration, Mary watched from the kitchen, her heart heavy with pity. Mary had always known her place in the household, but lately, she had begun to see the deep cracks forming within the family. Chief John was trying, she could see it in his tired eyes, but he was fighting a battle alone. The children were lost, their mother was absent, and the home was no longer a home. One night, after another heated argument between Rose and Chief John, Mary found Jennifer curled up on the living room couch, her eyes red from crying. "Jennifer, are you okay?" Mary asked gently. Jennifer sniffled. "I miss how things used to be. I miss when Mama cared." Mary's heart ached. She sat down beside her and stroked her hair. "It's going to be okay," she promised. "You and Joe don't have to feel alone. I'll take care of you." True to her word, Mary took it upon herself to restore order in the house. She didn't just clean, she made the home feel warm again. She began waking the children up for school, making sure they were properly dressed and had breakfast. She sat with them after school, helping them with their homework and teaching them respect and discipline. She taught Joe to take responsibility, showing him how to tidy up and look after his younger sister. She comforted Jennifer, teaching her the importance of kindness and self-worth. Slowly, the children began to rely on Mary, not just as a housemaid, but as the maternal figure they had lost. Chief John noticed. One evening, as he arrived home, he was shocked to find the living room tidy, the kitchen clean, and the smell of home-cooked food filling the air. He stepped inside cautiously, expecting to see Rose for once, but instead, he found Mary placing dishes on the dining table. "You cooked?" he asked, surprised. Mary nodded, her face shy. "Yes, sir. I thought you might like a proper meal after a long day." Joel and Jennifer ran up to him, excitement in their eyes. "Daddy, look what Mary taught us today." They proudly showed him the small chores they had done, their enthusiasm genuine. For the first time in weeks, Chief John felt a flicker of warmth in his heart. He turned to Mary, his expression soft. "Thank you, Mary," he said sincerely. "For everything." She smiled, but deep down, she knew this wasn't how things were supposed to be. She wasn't their mother. Rose was. And yet, Rose was too lost in her new world to see what she was losing. One night, things reached a boiling point. Rose returned home at 4 a.m., drunk and laughing loudly on the phone. Chief John had been waiting. "Rose," he said coldly. We need to talk. Now. Rose rolled her eyes. Ugh, what now? This is not a home anymore. You've abandoned your children, your responsibilities, and this marriage. You come and go as you please, and I won't tolerate it any longer. Rose crossed her arms. So what are you going to do? Kick me out? Chief John exhaled sharply, shaking his head. No, Rose. I won't kick you out. But if you don't change, you will lose this family. Rose coughed, but something in his voice sent a chill down her spine. She turned away, pretending not to care. But deep down, for the first time in a long time, she felt afraid. Because she could see it now, she was no longer needed. Mary had unknowingly stepped into her place. And if Rose wasn't careful, she might lose everything. The days passed, and Rose's world continued to spiral. Her friends continued to feel her sense of entitlement, urging her to demand more and push Chief John further away. She clung to the idea that she deserved freedom, freedom from responsibility, from the confines of a family she no longer recognized as hers. She drowned her discontent in shopping sprees, late-night parties, and the fleeting attention of men who didn't care about her. But her home was crumbling. One morning, as Rose prepared to leave for another girls' day out, she stumbled upon a letter on the kitchen counter. It was from Chief John's lawyer. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the words that struck her like a punch in the gut. Her hands shook as she read on, the words growing blurry. This letter serves as a formal notice of separation. After much consideration, Chief John has decided that due to ongoing neglect of the family and failure to fulfill responsibilities as a partner and mother, he is pursuing legal action to protect the well-being of the children and ensure they are provided the care they need. Rose's vision blurred with panic. She crumpled the letter in her hand, her heart racing. Separation. No, it wouldn't, she whispered to herself, as if hoping the words would magically change. But deep down, she knew. She had pushed him too far. When Chief John came home that evening, Rose was waiting for him, her eyes bloodshot from a mix of exhaustion and panic. She stood in the living room, holding the crumpled letter in her hand. "John, we need to talk," she said, her voice unsteady. He looked at her for a moment, his face unreadable. He knew exactly why she was upset. He had been prepared for this confrontation. "Rose," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I've tried to be patient. I've tried to make things work. But you've made it impossible." Rose's breath hitched. "You can't do this, John. Please, don't take the kids from me." "I'm not doing this to hurt you, Rose," he said quietly. "I'm doing it because you've abandoned them. You've abandoned this family. You've turned your back on the children, and I can't let that continue. Not for their sake, and not for mine." Rose shook her head in disbelief, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've been trying to find myself, John. I just needed space, freedom. I needed something more than this life. You think I haven't needed space, too?" Chief John's voice cracked with frustration. "I've worked myself to the bone to give you everything. I didn't even notice how far you were drifting. But now I realize what's been happening. You've been living in a fantasy, and we've all been caught in it." Rose's tears spilled over, but they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of guilt, of regret, tears she couldn't wipe away because she had ignored every warning sign. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. Chief John looked at her for a long moment, the weight of everything they had lost sinking in. Finally, he said softly, "I loved you, Rose. But I can't keep pretending everything is okay when our children are falling apart and you're nowhere to be found. You need to take responsibility for your actions. If you want to fix this, it's going to take more than words." The days that followed were a blur for Rose. She tried to fight the legal proceedings, but she couldn't escape the reality of what she had done. Her friends, once a source of encouragement, now looked at her with pity as they saw her world unravel. Her attempts to rekindle the bond with her children failed, as they had already learned to live without her. Mary, on the other hand, had become a constant in the children's lives. Chief John leaned on her more and more, not just as a housemaid, but as the person who had kept the house together when everything seemed to fall apart. She was a quiet force, strong, compassionate, and reliable. She had stepped in when Rose abandoned her responsibilities and became the mother the children needed. One evening, as Chief John sat with Joel and Jennifer, he realized just how much they had grown in the past few weeks. They were more confident, more mature. They had learned not just manners and discipline, but also what it meant to be loved and cared for. Joel looked at him with newfound respect. "Thanks for not giving up on us, Dad." Jennifer smiled softly. "We are better now, aren't we?" Chief John's heart swelled. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally taking control of his life and protecting his children. Meanwhile, Rose had hit rock bottom. Without her children and with a dwindling social circle, she was forced to confront the deep loneliness she had ignored for so long. She sought therapy, trying to rebuild herself, but the damage had been done. Her attempt to rekindle the relationship with Chief John failed, and she finally came to the painful realization that she had lost the family she had once taken for granted. The weight of her choices settled in like a permanent ache. She no longer had the power to control her own life as she once did. She was no longer the carefree woman who could come and go as she pleased. Now, she was just a shell of that woman, lost in a life of consequences she had never anticipated. As for Chief John, he continued to rebuild his family, one that was finally grounded in love, respect, and responsibility. It was a long road ahead, but he knew he was no longer alone. Mary had shown him what it truly meant to be a parent, and he vowed never to take that for granted again. But for Rose, the road ahead was uncertain. She had to face the truth: some things couldn't be fixed. And by the time she understood that, it was too late. As the weeks passed, Chief John couldn't ignore the growing feelings he had for Mary. It wasn't something he had planned for, nor was it something he had anticipated. But there was something about her quiet strength, her unwavering care for his children, and the calm presence she brought into their home that had begun to stir a deep, unfamiliar urge inside him. Mary had proven herself time and again. She had not only kept the house in order, but she had also stepped up when Rose had abandoned the family. Her love for his children was genuine, and she taught them the things they needed: respect, kindness, responsibility, traits that Rose had long forgotten. At first, Chief John dismissed it. He told himself it was just gratitude, a natural appreciation for what she had done for his family. But the more time passed, the more he realized that it was something deeper, something more profound than mere thankfulness. One evening, as Chief John entered the kitchen after a long day of work, he found Mary preparing dinner. The room was filled with the warm scent of food, and Joel and Jennifer were sitting at the table, talking and laughing. The atmosphere was light, calm, so different from the tension-filled evenings he had spent with Rose. "Everything smells amazing, Mary," he said, his voice softer than usual. Mary smiled up at him, her eyes kind but distant. "Thank you, sir. It's just a simple stew. I thought it might be nice after your long day." He couldn't help but notice how effortlessly she took care of everything. She never complained, never made him feel guilty, never demanded attention or validation. She simply did what needed to be done and did it well. As she handed him a bowl of the stew, their fingers brushed lightly. Chief John's breath caught in his throat. It was a simple touch, yet it sent a wave of warmth rushing through him. His pulse quickened, and for a moment, he froze. Are you all right, sir? Mary asked, her brow furrowing in concern, but he quickly masked his emotions. Yes, he replied, clearing his throat. Just tired, I guess. Thank you for everything, Mary. You've been such a blessing to us. Mary nodded, offering him a small, knowing smile. She had seen him struggle. She had seen how much the family had changed since Rose's absence, and she had quietly watched over them, making sure they didn't fall apart. But she also knew there were boundaries. She had a role to play, and it was a role she respected. But Chief John couldn't deny that the more he saw her caring for his children, the more he noticed the quiet grace with which she handled everything, the more his heart ached. He found himself thinking of her in a way he shouldn't, his thoughts strained to her soft voice, the way she moved with such purpose, the way her smile seemed to light up even the darkest moments. As these feelings for Mary deepened, Chief John found himself growing increasingly distant from Rose. He couldn't stand her flippant attitude anymore. Her disregard for the children, her lack of responsibility, and her selfishness had become unbearable. He no longer had the patience to tolerate her late nights out, her dismissive attitude toward him, or the constant complaints she would throw at him for daring to bring up the state of their family. One evening, Rose returned home to find Chief John sitting on the couch, reading a book. She dropped her purse on the floor with a loud thud. "John, are you going to keep ignoring me?" she asked, her voice sharp. Chief John glanced up at her, his eyes cold. "No, Rose. I'm just tired." "Tired of me, you mean?" Rose crossed her arms, clearly irritated. "Why are you so distant? We've been through worse than this, haven't we?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his mind wandered to Mary, who had just finished helping the children with their homework. He could hear her soft voice from the next room, guiding them gently, offering words of encouragement. Rose's voice snapped him back to reality. "What are you looking at?" she demanded. "Why aren't you listening to me?" "Because I'm done, Rose," Chief John finally said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. I can't do this anymore." Rose's eyes widened, disbelief flooding her expression. "What do you mean? What do you mean you're done?" "I can't keep living like this, Rose," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're not a family anymore. And you," he paused, taking a deep breath. "You haven't been the wife and mother you promised to be. I've had enough." Rose's eyes narrowed, her anger flaring. "So now it's my fault? After everything I've done for you?" "No, it's your fault because you haven't done anything for us," Chief John cut in. "You've abandoned this family. And I'm not going to keep pretending it's okay." As the days passed, Chief John's feelings for Mary grew harder to ignore. He found himself looking for ways to spend time with her, even if it was just a simple conversation or a brief moment to thank her for something she had done. But Mary, ever the professional, remained unaware of the undercurrent of his emotions. She had always respected Chief John and was deeply grateful for the opportunity to help him and his children. She had seen the strain in his eyes, the exhaustion he carried from trying to hold everything together. But she never once crossed the line. She knew the importance of boundaries. She knew she was not the woman he had once married, and she wasn't about to jeopardize her role as a caregiver. Still, the way Chief John looked at her sometimes made her heart race in ways she didn't fully understand. She could sense something had changed in him, something subtle yet undeniable. And while she did her best to keep a distance, there were moments when she felt a pull, a connection between them that couldn't easily be explained. One evening, when the children were in bed and Rose was out yet again, Chief John found himself standing in the kitchen, watching Mary as she cleaned up after dinner. The moonlight streamed in through the window, casting a soft glow around her. He couldn't stop himself. He stepped forward, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "Mary." She turned, startled by his tone. Yes, sir. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. I don't know what I'd do without you, Chief John said, his heart pounding. You've given this family more than I ever could have asked for. More than anyone could have. Mary blinked, surprised by the raw honesty in his voice. I'm just doing my job, Chief John. I'm here for the children, and I'll always be. I know, he said, his voice softer now. But you've done more than that. You've saved us all. You've saved me. For a brief moment, there was a silence, heavy with emotion. Mary's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly regained composure. I'm just doing what's right, she said quietly, avoiding his gaze. Chief John stared at her, his heart racing. He wanted to say more, to admit how much she meant to him, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he took a step back, looking down. Thank you, Mary, he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet desperation. She nodded, though she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something both beautiful and dangerous.